Exciting round at the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. Max Verstappen from Red Bull secured pole position for the 8th time in the 2023 Formula One season, increasing expectations for tomorrow's race. The qualifying session was marked by challenging conditions, red flags, and an initially wet track, forcing the drivers to start the day on intermediate tyres. As the track dried, lap times started to improve, and several drivers began to stand out as possible contenders for pole. However, Verstappen once again showed why he is considered one of the greatest talents in Formula One, clinching pole position and positioning himself for his third consecutive victory in his home race. Lando Norris from McLaren had a solid performance and took second place on the grid, while George Russell gave Mercedes a reason to celebrate, finishing in third. Williams driver Alex Albon also had a great qualifying session, setting the fourth fastest time. Meanwhile, Ferrari continues to face difficulties this season. Charles Leclerc ended up crashing his car during Q3, costing them a better position in tomorrow's race. It is important to remember that, despite pole position being a great advantage, the race is an open field and a lot can happen in the laps to come. This battle is just beginning, and we can't wait to see who will cross the finish line first tomorrow. Hello, speed lovers. This is Enzo speaking, bringing you another special episode of our beloved F1 Motor Fever podcast. Today, we are in a race weekend, and we promise to bring you intriguing analysis of everything that happened. With me, we have William, our experienced commentator who always provides us with a unique perspective on the races, and Victoria, the trackside reporter who doesn't miss a detail. Remember, we are always here at noon and at 4 o'clock, bringing you all the latest news from the world of Formula One. And there's more, on race weekends, we have extra episodes for you. So, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the notifications, leave your comments, and share with friends and family. It helps us a lot to keep our channel active and always bring you the best of motorsport.
Hey, guys. This is William, ready for another weekend full of excitement and speed.
Hello, listeners. Victoria here, reporting live from the track, to bring you all the hot information.
Alright, folks. You don't want to miss the details of this amazing race. So, get ready because we're diving into all the details. Pedal to the metal. Hold on tight. Here we go. Felipe, Vicente, cue the jingle. Continuing, I must say that Max Verstappen's performance was impressive. The Red Bull driver secured his 8th pole position of the season. Even in a challenging session, with red flags and a wet track, Verstappen showed that he truly knows the Zandvoort circuit, his home. The Dutch driver surpassed Lando Norris, who was fast but had to settle for second place. George Russell gave Mercedes something to smile about, taking the third fastest time, and right behind him, we have none other than Alex Albon, who had a surprising race for Williams.
Enzo Watts, sorry for the question that might seem a bit obvious, but could you explain what a pole position is for those who are not so familiar with the term?
Oh, William. That was a question worthy of a Formula One beginner. But alright, here we go. The pole position is the first position on the starting grid, determined by the qualifying session. This means that the driver who achieved the pole, like Verstappen in this case, will be the first to start in Sunday's race.
I know, Enzo, it may seem a bit obvious to us, but there might be someone who doesn't know much about Formula One listening. It's always good to clarify.
Of course, of course. I just hope our listeners don't get tired and switch channels with these questions.
Oh, I doubt it. A little dose of basic information can be very interesting, even if it seems obvious.
Moving on, Verstappen talked about the challenge of qualifying after securing his 28th pole position in F1. He mentioned how slippery the track was due to the new asphalt and the challenge of putting in good laps without getting involved in accidents. He also highlighted how crucial the choice of intermediate tyres at the start of Q3 was for his success. But something that intrigues me is that Verstappen talked about the pressure of having to perform well in front of his home fans, and how when things go as planned, the feeling is incredible. William, do you remember any other driver who has said something similar in a similar situation?
I can't recall off the top of my head, Enzo. Let's ask our reporter Victoria Parker, who is always keeping an eye on these things.
Yes, Victoria, do you remember any driver who has expressed similar feelings in a similar situation?
Hello, Enzo and William. Yes, indeed. Nico Rosberg, when he won the Monaco Grand Prix in 2013, said something very similar. He mentioned how amazing it was to win at home and the extra pressure he felt racing in front of his fellow countrymen.
Oh, wow. I didn't remember that. It really seems like the feeling of winning at home is something quite special for these drivers. Thank you very much, Victoria, you always bring us valuable information. It's a great advantage to have you there at the track to confirm these things. Guys, let's take a little break here before we continue our chat. If you're enjoying our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the F1 Motor Fever podcast channel. It really helps us to keep bringing you the best analysis and commentary from the world of Formula One. And don't forget to share our podcast with your friends too. Remember, we are live every day at noon and at 4 o'clock. And there's more, on race weekends, we have special episodes with all the details of what happened on the track. Plus, every Thursday, we have a special longer episode where we delve into an epic topic from the world of motorsport. So stay tuned.
That's right, guys. Your like is very important to us. Now, getting back to our topic.
Getting back to our topic, Lando Norris, who came in second, commented on his performance in this race. He said he was happy, despite the challenges. He mentioned that the first half of the final lap was amazing, but the second half was probably one of the worst he has ever done. Nevertheless, he said he really enjoys these challenging conditions and was satisfied with his second place.
And what did George Russell, who took third position, say?
Russell was clearly ecstatic about his position. He said it was a great session and admitted that, although qualifying used to be one of his strengths earlier in the season, he had been struggling recently. But it seems he managed to regroup and came up with new ideas. He is confident that he is in a great position to fight for the podium tomorrow.
It looks like it's going to be an interesting race. Any predictions, Enzo?
Well, according to Russell himself, he thinks Verstappen will have a smooth race and enjoy the moment. But he also expects a good battle with Alex, Lando, and the others. It will be interesting to see how the race unfolds. Moving on to our chat, we reach the final qualifying stage, Q3. It started with slick tyres seeming to be the best option, while some drivers went out on intermediates, others opted for the softs, namely Albon, Alonso, Russell, and Sargent. Verstappen went out on intermediates but immediately radioed the team to prepare the slicks, realizing that the track was dry enough for them.
It seems there was an accident, right?
Yes, less than 2 minutes into the session, Sargent spoiled all his good work and crashed his Williams into the barriers at turn 2, bringing out the red flag. At that point, only Albon, Sargent, Carlos Sainz, and Russell had set lap times. Sargent, on the slick tyres, veered for a split second off a narrow dry line, and the game was over for him.
That must have been a big disappointment for him.
Definitely, William. After Sargent's accident, the session was released with just over 8 minutes remaining on the clock, and all the remaining cars went out on the red-banded softs. Now we wait to see what happens next. Well, with 4 minutes remaining after the restart, we had another red flag. This time it was Leclerc who crashed his SF23 at turn 9, sliding onto the grass and hitting the barriers. At that point, the top three were Norris, Oscar Piastri, and Verstappen.
How did the situation unfold after Leclerc's accident?
Well, after Leclerc's damaged car was removed, the question was to make a fast lap work. And that's exactly what Verstappen did, setting a lap time of 1 minute, 10 seconds, and 567 thousandths to snatch pole from Norris by just over half a second. Russell was the fastest for Mercedes, 1/100th of a second behind Norris and just ahead of Albon from Williams, who had to settle for 4th place.
And what about the other drivers? How did they fare?
Fernando Alonso set a lap time of 1 minute, 11 seconds, and 506 thousandths to be the 5th fastest in the Aston Martin, and he was a 1/4 of a second faster than his compatriot Sainz, who was the 6th fastest in the Ferrari. It's going to be really interesting to see how this race unfolds. Continuing our report, Sergio Perez was the 7th fastest, over a second adrift of his teammate Verstappen. McLaren's Piastri was the 8th fastest, but still less than a second behind Norris.
And what about Leclerc and Sargent?
The lap time Leclerc set before crashing was good enough to put him in 9th, ahead of Sargent, who finished 10th.
And how did things go in Q2?
Q2 started with rain away from the track, which meant a drying track would make things tricky for the drivers trying a banker lap, and then attempting to improve with the continuously drying track. But the big surprise was Hamilton being eliminated, while both Williams cars made it through to Q3. Verstappen set the fastest lap in Q2, with a lap time of 1 minute, 18 seconds, and 856 thousandths. He was just over half a second faster than Piastri, who came in second, while Albon was only 7 thousandths behind in third.
And what about the others?
Lance Stroll ended up being the first to miss out on Q2, finishing 11th, missing out by 54 thousandths of a second, while Pierre Gasly was the 12th fastest with Alpine. It seems we had plenty of action in this qualifying session. Going further back to Q2, Hamilton was hampered by traffic. He will line up 13th on the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix, his best time being 1 minute, 20 seconds, and 151 thousandths, over 1 second and 200ths behind the fastest time.
Were there any other drivers under investigation?
Yes, Hamilton and Tsunoda were announced as under investigation for impeding other drivers. It's also worth noting that Leclerc visited the gravel for the 4th time on Saturday, at turn 1. But he managed to get through it.
And how was the situation in Q1?
Q1 followed a wet and damp FP3, with cars lining up in the pits to ensure they got out on track and set a banker lap in case conditions worsened. The track temperature was 22 degrees, while the ambient temperature was 17 degrees. The track was very wet, but the rain had stopped, which meant grip would improve with each lap completed around Zandvoort. Albon has been impressive so far, but he was one of the first drivers to go off into the gravel at turn 11 in Q1. Verstappen soon had a moment at turn 1 and complained on the radio, "Man, what's happening with the car?" It seems we had some dramas in Q1 as well. Verstappen seemed to struggle during Q1, complaining about the lack of grip. He said, "There's no grip. I'm sliding everywhere."
How were the track conditions evolving?
The conditions continued to improve, and lap times kept dropping, with several drivers taking turns at the top. Piastri had a close call with Sainz, who was exiting the pits and didn't see the Australian approaching.
And Hamilton, any new complaints?
Yes, Hamilton complained about being impeded by Stroll's Aston Martin and also by Alonso. While the first 2 incidents would be investigated after the session, the one involving Alonso did not require further investigation, according to the race stewards. In the end, Albon led the way into Q2 with a lap time of 1 minute, 20 seconds, and 939 thousandths, 26 thousandths ahead of Verstappen in second, with Piastri being the 3rd fastest. And that wraps up Q1. Unfortunately for some drivers, Q1 was the end of the line. Zhu Guanyu was the first to be eliminated, finishing in 16th place, edged out by Sargent by just 31 thousandths of a second.
Who were the other eliminations?
Esteban Ocon from Alpine was the 17th fastest, missing out on Q2 by 74 thousandths. He was 82 thousandths ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who was the 18th fastest with Haas. Valtteri Bottas from Alfa Romeo was only the 19th fastest, and Liam Lawson was last in his Formula 1 debut, over 2 seconds and 400ths behind the leader.
And Leclerc, how was he feeling?
Leclerc, who was the 14th fastest in Q1, was at risk of elimination. Not to mention, he was not happy with how his team managed the session and expressed his frustrations on the team radio. He said, "Come on. Now, we need to be ready. Traffic is the most important thing. Tire warm-up, everything, that's important. That's the only priority we have." He continued, "Let's focus on that, and everything will be fine, otherwise, we'll be eliminated in Q2. We're already lucky to be here." It seems we had a Q1 full of emotions and tensions, both on and off the track. William Turner, let's take a look at what the internet is saying about today's topic.
Sure thing. Here we have a comment from user Flying Kittycate that says, "Parking Zandvoort."
Interesting. Any relevant comments in that thread?
Yes, user legitimate, Fun1413 replies, "That one is mine, by the way." And Razareddit says, "And next to yours is mine."
It seems like we're in a virtual parking lot.
And the fun continues. Legitimate, Fun1413 replies again, saying, "No, mine is over there, yours is near the other bike." And then, user N0YA joins the conversation and says, "I can't see yours, mate. It was stolen by me."
This discussion is getting serious.
There's more. Darkhoof replies to Razareddit, saying, "I can't see the mime anywhere." And then, AceMKV adds, "I guess that means they're doing a good job." It seems like the internet is full of comedians.
It's definitely a place to have fun and get informed. Any other gems to share, William?
Several users, like Mobius F117 and Bender 3600, comment on how in Amsterdam, bikes don't belong to anyone in particular but to everyone. Noob_Zarathustra joins the fun and says, "Dude, that one is mine."
It seems like everyone is trying to claim the same bike.
And there's more. Beneficial Poetry 6457 talks about the importance of taking a picture to remember where you parked. And from the discussion that follows, it seems that riding a bike after drinking is a common practice in the Netherlands, but it can lead to some funny accidents.
It looks like fun is guaranteed in Amsterdam, right, William? Thank you very much for joining us today on the F1 Motor Fever podcast. We talked a lot about the nuances of the last race and the excitement on social media. None of this would be possible without you, our amazing audience. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notifications so you don't miss any of our episodes. If you enjoyed it, share our podcast with your friends, family, and in your Formula One discussion groups. Leave your comments too, we love hearing your opinions.
Indeed, Enzo, and don't forget, we are here every day at noon and at 4 o'clock, always bringing you interesting discussions and lots of information about the world of Formula One. I thank all of you for choosing us as your daily company, and also our technical team, especially Felipe and Vicente, who make all of this possible.
Absolutely, William. And, folks, we're already looking forward to the next episode.
Definitely, Enzo Watts, I can't wait.
So, that's it, folks. Pedal to the metal and eyes on the track, our channel always conquers. Until next time. Vicente, you can play the jingle.